The memory that stays with me of 5 coffins with the Union flag over them and the helicopter coming and the dust and the sun setting.
Was that in Afghanistan?
That was in Afghanistan, yeah. That was hard to deal with because I'd been there with them men. I was part of that explosion.
Can you tell me what was your childhood like?
Basically in life, some parents are just not meant to have children. And unfortunately my parents did, they had 5 children. And my dad, not that I've ever called him that, was never on the scene. He just wasn't interested. And the mother then, unfortunately she suffered with bipolar and schizophrenia, so she ended up in hospital and then put on top of that 5 children put into the system and then scattered around the country. It's a lot for any mother to emotionally have to try and hold on to, and then the system telling her what to do and where to go and how to behave. The first 3 brothers were split up and I don't know where they were because I was still just a baby. And me and my sister ended up moving around the country. Ended up in Eltham, was the first children's home, or foster home if you like. Abuse happened there. By the time I was 10 years old, I'd already had a golf club wrapped around my head. Then I had to leave that foster home. I ended up down in Peckham and Lewisham in different homes. This is with my sister as well, and abuse took place there as well. But at the time I was 16, I was in London and I was getting myself in more trouble. I was seeing things that I shouldn't be seeing. And I think I was just wandering around trying to find a bit of cash in handwork. I was just trying to find a bit of cash in handwork, and I ended up over Trafalgar. I was really depressed. My jeans were dirty, I was smelly, I was sleeping rough. My belly was hungry, like sore hungry. My legs were tired. My mind was just boggled because I wanted more in my life than just what was happening. And I see this soldier walk past me. Look, do you know what I mean? He looked smart, he looked handsome, he looked strong. There was a bit of a swagger about him, the way he was. And I just thought, yeah, give it a chance. Why not? Take the risk or lose the chance. And I signed on the dotted line. I joined Her Majesty's Rifles, which is an infantry battalion or an infantry regiment. And I ended up in Yorkshire to do my basic training, Northern Ireland, and then Afghanistan. And by the time I was 20,
What did army teach you?
respect, independence. It taught me success. It taught me how to be fearless. It taught me how to love when I never had love in my life.
What was the toughest thing you've experienced in the army?
The memory that stays with me of 5 coffins with the Union flag over them and the helicopter coming and the dust and the sun setting.
Was that in Afghanistan?
That was in Afghanistan, yeah. That was hard to deal with because I'd been there with them men. I was part of that explosion.
Can you walk me through the day when you lost your sight?
It was Operation Pound for Claw, and it was operation named Herrick 10. It was in 2009. I'd been out there pretty much for my 6-month tour. We was in a FOB called, FOB meaning Forward Operating Base. We was in the front line there, and basically I had to go down the same road, which was called Pharmacy Road. And this is where we lost 5 lads and several wounded, and other people had been injured and killed on the same road, so it was notorious. And my job would be the Vallon man, V-A-L-L-O-N, and that's to find the IEDs. I was first man out, last man back in. And on this day, my platoon commander, Mr. Hillard, I remember him kicking my bunk and saying, "Jakey, I want you on this patrol." I didn't need to be on this patrol, but I was asked to go on it. And it was another regiment coming in. And I'd made friends with this fellow called Jonathan Young from, I think it was either the Yorks or the Mercians, but he'll have to forgive me for that one. And they were leading the patrol. And I was good at my job as a Vallon man, leading men, bringing them back in safe. But I hadn't failed. But the one day that I wasn't patrolling and leading the men, all hell broke loose. And Unfortunately, poor Jonathan Young was killed because he was taking over from my position. He was still fresh on the ground. He was 19 years old. And yeah, there was no need to go up that part of the dirt track because it didn't lead anywhere. We couldn't do anything with that ground. And I went forward to try and assist his body. There was a small arms contact. I was injured in the first explosion. The second explosion then came by my platoon sergeant, my sniper sergeant, Paul McAleese. There was a bit of misunderstanding between me and McAleese, and he tripped the secondary device, which unfortunately killed him and then injured me. And that's the end of my career.
What did it feel like at the moment?
It's going to take more than a plaster to fix this one. You just knew. It's like you just know. I can't explain it. When McAleese took that move, I just knew what was coming. It's milliseconds, and your brain is registering it, but it's not. The body can't do nothing about it. It's just, you just have to accept it. There's smoke, there's dust, there's sand, there's heat, there's blood, there's guts, and then you've got an earpiece in with people screaming at you, and then you've got people on your flank screaming, and then there's contacts with the GPMGs or some sort of weapon going off. It's just carnage, isn't it?
So what happened after the injury?
Talking to the lads and the ladies on the ground, they tell me that I was really pissed off, and apparently I casevaped myself backwards behind the machine guns, and I was stripped down to my boots because that's what the explosion did to me. It flipped me back, but apparently I stood up and I wasn't too pleased. That's what they tell me. And then apparently I collapsed, lack of blood. And because at the end of the day, shrapnel ripped through my right thigh, ripped through my upper right arm, shrapnel through the nose, through the right eye, into the brain. What is it they say, 2 millimeters from my throat. So I'm lucky to be here, really.
What was the recovery process like?
From coma to talking, there was no dramas with that because I was in a hospital, in a military hospital where everyone had lost arms and legs and there was something wrong with someone, and your mind, with all the drugs, sleeping, the routine, you didn't really get a chance to think about it. But it's only when you went home, not that I had a home to go to, but when you was left alone, should I say, and you wasn't in the hospital environment with routine, medication, the realisation strikes. So the first year I actually had a bit of sight that I could walk around on my own, and the hospital did an operation and it failed. So I spent a whole year with hope and faith to then do an operation and then being told it was a failure. And yeah, I'm not an emotional man, but you know, when you have so much faith and hope that you're going to be able to see at least, and then you're laying in that hospital bed and you can't use your right arm, you can barely walk, and you bring the lamp to your face and you're flicking the light on and off just for that glimmer of hope, that little bit. There was nothing.
What were the hardest things for you to learn over again?
Accepting who I am and what I am. And I'm never going to be what I wanted to be. I have to be this whole different person now. So I'll give you an example. I've got a 10-year-old son. I've never seen him. He's the only reason I'm living. He's the only reason for existence. Because as you can probably imagine, it's quite hard sometimes when I'm fighting my own PTSD. But you know, I have to just keep thinking that that's a little man that needs me, and I will keep fighting. And that's just it. He is my hero.
So in terms of support for the veterans, do you think enough is done or not really?
What support? It takes 6 months to go from civvy to soldier, but only takes 5 days to go from soldier to civvy. There's obviously something very corrupt in that, isn't there? And that's the problem we've got on the streets now with so many veterans. They invest so much in us at the beginning, from civilian to veteran, civilian to soldier, which is 6 months to a year. But then when we want to leave and come through the gates, it's only 5 days.
You mentioned PTSD several times. Can you talk me a bit through what it is for you?
It's emotions, it's mental, it's physical, So the last time I had an outburst, I was in Malta back at Christmas. So I'll give you a scenario. When you're on holiday, you get all the walls are whitewashed, and you get the terraces that go up onto the balconies and all that lime whitewashed walls, and the steps are cold. Well, in Afghanistan, there's buildings like that as well. A pal of mine, there was a contact that happened, an IDF, so that's indirect fire, so that's mortars, rockets, anything that can be fired over a wall or even a grenade. So that came in, and then there was a massive contact, and it's all going off, and we're inside our own fob. So we've all hit the deck, body armour and helmets on. And I remember stacking up against this wall, and as one of the other fellas come down, he'd been pinged in the arm by a 7.62 PK round, and if you've ever seen one of them like scary movies where the blood goes absolutely everywhere, and you imagine 1 second this wall is whitewashed and it's all clean, and it was just carnage, all just stripping down the wall, and he's holding onto his arm, and and then you're having to run through that, run up it, and and then when I was in Malta, that was a feeling. Obviously I couldn't see it, but it was a feeling. And the brain just triggers things. It just triggers an emotion because it's trying to protect itself.
Can you talk me through the next goals you have in terms of your achievement?
So since I've lost my sight, there's a list. I've done several triathlons, marathons, your 10Ks, your 5Ks, Great South Run, Great North Run, 200K walks in 24 hours, Mount Kilimanjaro, parachute jumps. I've fought in the ring a few times now against sighted opponents. I've walked across Norway, I've said that, haven't I, for the Heroes of Telemark. Cycled 500 miles in 5 days on the tandem push bike. I come from a system as an orphan, and I would have gone into the army and I'd have served my country well, and I would have been proud because the people in there have got your back, and I can cope with that. But that's not my career. That's not who I am now. So I've now got to utilise what I've got. The Paralympics have got wheelchair boxing, but they ain't got no blind boxing. So at the moment there's actually talks, and I'm actually talking to the governing bodies at the moment, and that's all I can really say on that at the moment. But wouldn't it be nice to set your own standards and set up a blind boxing? I've been blind 12 years now, and I always told myself by the time that I've been blind 15 years, I'd have been to the summit of Everest, and I will have 3 more fights in the ring and win myself a belt. And then I'm classed as number 1 then, ain't I? And then I'll take my story to Hollywood and sell it. Make millions, sit back, get fat.
After everything you've been through, do you see yourself as a hero?
No. The heroes are the ones that come back in the box. They're the heroes. They've given it all up. I've still got to fight.
Do you feel bitter
Bitter about what?
about life?
Nah, not at all. I've got a good life. It's just made it a little bit more difficult. I'm successful. I own my own company. I've got a nice lady. I've got a son. I've got a roof over my head and food in my belly. God loves me, so job's a good one. Since losing my sight, it's taught me compassion, it's taught me humility, it's taught me not to judge people. And we're all guilty of that. All guilty that, just because that person's wearing gothic clothes or wearing chavvy clothes or, doesn't mean that person wouldn't help me, And before, if I had sight, I would have probably not stuck my nose up in the air, but just avoided them and walked on the other side of the road. But now I rely on all people to assist me, so I don't judge.
What are you most proud of?
Obviously, the first thing that I'm proud of is the son, you know what I mean? It's a blessing. It truly is a blessing to have a child. He never knew me as a soldier, but his stepdaddy is a soldier. So the photos around the house where he lives is all of my ex-partner and his new stepdaddy as a soldier and in combat, some medals and bits and bobs, and he ain't never seen me that. And he's only ever seen me as a man with a white stick. So although that his stepdaddy is achieving in 1 degree, I'm achieving in many degrees. Because it's not every day your dad is completely blind and has been war blinded and will summit Everest as the first British war blinded. It's not every day your daddy gets in the ring and fights sighted people completely blind or does a triathlon on a marathon. So I just need to achieve, and I want him to be inspired that doesn't matter whether you're able-bodied or disabled, it's about ability.
I could see 2 guys with a PKM belt-fed Russian machine gun, and they were hammering down on the lads. My rifle only shoots 1,500 metres, so I had to, I call it lob in. I lobbed the bullet in,